David's obsession intensified, eclipsing all other aspects of his life. Sleep became a luxury he could scarcely afford, replaced by a constant vigil of listening, deciphering, and desperately clinging to the fragile hope of hearing Michael's voice. His apartment transformed into a soundproof chamber of madness. The curtains remained perpetually drawn, casting the space in a dim, unsettling gloom, and the air thrummed with the incessant static emanating from the resonance implant. Every surface was littered with notes scribbled in a frantic hand, attempts to map the frequencies, to categorize the voices, to make sense of the chaotic symphony that had taken over his life. Food became an afterthought, meals skipped or forgotten entirely, and his appearance deteriorated. His eyes were bloodshot and shadowed, his hair unkempt, his clothes rumpled and stained. He had become a prisoner of his grief, shackled to the resonance implant. The fragmented sounds filled every corner of his existence, a relentless barrage that eroded his sanity. He strained to separate Michael's voice from the cacophony, his initial hope slowly morphing into a desperate, all-consuming need to comprehend the strange signals that plagued him. He told himself that understanding the device was the key to unlocking the secrets of his son's lingering presence. But even as he repeated the mantra, a chilling realization crept into his mind. His quest had become something more, something darker. He wasn't just trying to hear Michael. He was trying to unravel the fabric of reality itself. Days bled into nights, marked only by the shifting patterns of static and the increasingly bizarre intrusions of unknown voices. He experimented with the device, tweaking the dials, adjusting the frequencies, hoping to isolate a clear signal. But the more he fiddled, the more chaotic the soundscape became. Languages he didn't recognize, whispers that seemed to claw at the edges of his mind, and nonsensical phrases that resonated with an unsettling familiarity, all swirled together in a vortex of auditory chaos. Then, amidst the chaotic noise, something remarkable happened. A clear conversation emerged, spoken by voices unlike any he had heard before. They were distinct, articulate, and carried an authority that resonated deep within his bones. At first, he dismissed it as another hallucination, another trick of the implant. But as he listened, he realized that this was different. These voices were not fragments of memories or echoes of the past. They were engaged in a coherent dialogue. The temporal divergence is stabilizing. The subject is nearing resonance. Ensure the parameters are maintained. We cannot afford another failure. David's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't understand what they were talking about, but he sensed that it was somehow connected to him, to his use of the implant. He strained to hear more, but the voices faded, replaced by the familiar static. He desperately tweaked the dials, trying to recapture the signal, but it was gone. Then another voice emerged, this one different from the others. It was familiar, yet subtly altered, carrying an inflection that both comforted and disturbed him. "Dad." David froze, his breath catching in his throat. It couldn't be. It was impossible. But the voice was undeniable. It was Michael's, yet older, deeper, resonating with an experience beyond his years. "Michael, is that you?" "Yes, Dad, it's me. It's Michael from another time." David's mind reeled. Another time? What did that mean? "Where are you, Michael?" I'm in the future, Dad." A future where the accident never happened. David's world tilted on its axis. A future where the accident never happened. A future where Michael was still alive. It was too much to comprehend. "What do you mean?" "I mean that in my reality, you and Mom are still together. We live in a house by the sea. I'm studying to be a doctor. We're happy." The words struck David like a physical blow. A house by the sea, studying to be a doctor, happy? It was a vision of a life he had lost, a life that could have been, a life that existed only in some alternate reality. "What's it like? Tell me about it." And Michael did. He described the house by the sea, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the warmth of the sun on his face. He described his mother's laughter, his father's strong embrace, the simple joys of a life lived without the shadow of grief. He spoke of holidays spent traveling the world, of late-night talks around a campfire, of dreams realized and futures embraced. As David listened, his heart swelled with a mixture of joy and agony. He was hearing his son's voice again, but he was also being confronted with a vision of a life he could never have. The stark contrast between his reality and the alternate future presented by the implant blurred the lines between what was real and what was illusion. He questioned his sanity, grappling with the possibility that the implant was not just replaying memories, but creating them. Was this future real, or was it a cruel fabrication designed to torment him? Was he truly communicating with his son, or was he simply talking to a figment of his imagination? The more he listened, the more confused he became. He started to lose track of time, of place, of his own identity. Moments of clarity were interspersed with periods where he struggled to distinguish between genuine memories and those manufactured by the device. He would find himself wandering through his apartment, unsure of where he was or what he was doing. He would stare at his reflection in the mirror, unable to recognize the haunted face that stared back at him. The implant's influence seeped into his mind, distorting his perception of reality and eroding his sense of self. He began to experience waking dreams, vivid hallucinations that blurred the line between the real world and the world of the implant. He would see faces flicker and change, objects morph and distort, and the very walls of his apartment seemed to breathe and shift around him. One evening, as he sat listening to Michael describe a family vacation to the Swiss Alps, the walls of his apartment began to melt. The familiar furniture dissolved into swirling colors, and the room transformed into a snow-covered mountain landscape. He could feel the cold air on his skin, the crunch of snow beneath his feet, and the warmth of the sun on his face. He was no longer in his apartment. He was in the Swiss Alps, standing next to Michael, gazing at the breathtaking view. But then the vision flickered, and the walls of his apartment reappeared. The furniture solidified, and the snow-covered landscape vanished. He was back in his apartment, alone, the resonance implant still clamped to his head. He ripped off the headphones and stumbled to the bathroom, his heart pounding in his chest. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, his eyes wide with terror. Who was he? What was happening to him? Was he losing his mind? He splashed cold water on his face, trying to regain his composure. But the image of the Swiss Alps lingered in his mind, a haunting reminder of the alternate reality he had glimpsed. He knew that he couldn't continue down this path. The implant was destroying him, tearing him apart, erasing his identity. But he couldn't stop. He was addicted to the whispers, to the hope of hearing Michael's voice, to the illusion of a better life. He returned to the living room and picked up the headphones. He hesitated for a moment, his hand trembling. He knew that he was playing with fire, that he was risking everything. But he couldn't resist. He had to hear Michael's voice again. He put on the headphones and pressed the power button. The device crackled to life, filling his ears with static. He closed his eyes and waited, bracing himself for the onslaught of whispers, the chaotic symphony of madness that had become his new reality. As the static swirled around him, he heard Michael's voice, clear and strong. "Dad," Michael said, "I need to tell you something." David's heart leapt with hope. "What is it, Michael?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not safe here, Dad," Michael said. "You need to stop listening. You need to disconnect the implant. They're watching us." David frowned. "Who's watching us, Michael?" he asked. "They're not who you think they are, Dad." Michael said, "They're using me. They're using you. They want something from you. You have to stop them before it's too late." The word sent a shiver down David's spine. "What do they want, Michael?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I can't tell you, Dad," Michael said. "It's too dangerous. Just trust me. Disconnect the implant. Please, Dad. Save yourself." The voice faded, replaced by the familiar static. David ripped off the headphones, his mind racing. Michael's warning echoed in his ears, a chilling premonition of impending doom. He knew that he should heed his son's advice, that he should destroy the implant and walk away from this madness. But he couldn't. He was too far gone. He was too addicted to the whispers, too desperate for the hope of a better life. He knew that he was on a dangerous path, that he was playing with forces he didn't understand. But he couldn't turn back now. He had to know the truth, no matter how terrible it might be. He had to find out who was watching him, what they wanted, and how to stop them. His apartment, once a sanctuary of grief, had become a prison of obsession, a battleground for a war he didn't understand. And he, David Holt, was now a pawn in a game of cosmic proportions, a game that threatened to unravel the fabric of reality itself.